Hello everybody and welcome. This is Jenna David. Today I will be putting forward my portfolio as a Master of Public Policy candidate at UMass Dartmouth for the spring of 2015. I'm excited to be here and to share with you the work that I've put together in the last 3 years, along with also sharing some insights and my overall experience with the program. So it has been a bit of a journey for me. I started the program in the fall of 2012, so it's pretty much coming fresh off from graduation as an undergrad at UMass Lowell in political science. So for me, this was kind of the natural progression I felt in my education. I chose to do the program part-time so that I could basically start my career. The first year I didn't work within my field, but starting in the second year, I started to seek work that aligned more with my studies, and I'm really grateful for those opportunities along the way. So this is the basic list of the core requirements for the Master of Public Policy degree. I thought it would be a good thing to kind of go over the different courses and what I took away from them, really. So the first course, Public Institutions and the Policy Process, was really introductory level course that laid kind of the groundwork for understanding the policy process, learning about who the actors are, how somebody can influence policy, and learning about some of the key policy areas currently in the United States was very helpful, I think, in just coming into this as somebody that had an idea but really needed those firm ground statements to better understand public policy as a whole. And really, again, as a foundation, it kind of kicks off to the rest of the program. For microeconomics, this was the first time I formally took any class related to economics, so it was a little bit, I think, of a struggle for me at first, but I'm really grateful that I worked through it and really learned some of the underlining, economic principles, not only in public policy, but really in markets, and to understand kind of the basic of economics, which is applied in so many different ways, policies that are put forward, in learning how policies can affect, economics, whether it's local, national, even global. Research methods was basically the cornerstone for the program. So for my paper proposal, I chose the topic of the Philadelphia Land Care Program. And basically, I was looking at the results from the program in Philadelphia and why the results were different from neighborhood to neighborhood. Within the Philadelphia Land Care Program, they take vacant lots through the city and they use a greening treatment. So basically, they're clearing them, they're leveling them, and they're planting grass to turn it into a kind of temporary green space. And my interest on the subject of vacant lots actually came from work at the Twin Cities Community Development Corp in Fitchburg, which I was AmeriCorps Vista there at the time. And I found it to be just a really great experience to be able to apply academically what I was doing at the time with the work that I was doing professionally. So I think that kind of like symbiotic relationship was just really helpful in understanding what I was learning at the time. For public management, this was my first experience with any sort of management class as well. And for me, I think not only understanding kind of how the public sector works, but even just general management topics is just so crucial, because a lot of the stuff we learn in public management can be applied to different sectors, whether it's business or a nonprofit. Organizational behavior I found to be the most interesting in terms of different, essential, management topics. So as somebody that might be a future manager, maybe not public, but possibly nonprofit, I think it was just really a good course to be introduced to the subject on. For policy analysis, I actually took this class this last semester. I think it would have been more beneficial for me to have taken it earlier, but nevertheless, it really provided the kind of frameworks or lenses to evaluate different policies, and I did recently complete the legislative memo focused on basically health impacts related to climate change and preparedness. And I really like that exercise of evaluating the policy based on, the theoretical frameworks that we learned in the class. For state and local finance, this was something that was also a little bit challenging for me as well, but I found that it was not only helpful in terms of academics, but really also as a citizen, being able to understand budgets as a resident, for example, understanding funding and how money gets appropriated to states and the local government, for example, and just to create this, bigger picture of finances was just really a great, complement to what I learned, I think, in microeconomics. And as somebody that's always been interested in local politics, for example, to be able to understand, local finance is just so crucial. For statistical analysis, this is another one of, I think the more difficult classes, but really to get through this was just, so wonderful in terms of being able to really understand the different statistical analysis methods, for example, when to apply them, based on what information that you're trying to get out from a data set, how your research design is set up, was just really great. And based on this course, the next logical step was to come up with a final research proposal. So without this, you really can't move on to that next step. And another real benefit, I think, of the course is being able to understand information and data that's presented to you. Just as everyday people, we come across statistics all the time, and to be able to read between the lines and really understand, the data is just really important, as a consumer, for example. So there's definitely different applications from this class, not only in research design, but just as a, regular person in everyday life. For applied policy research seminar, I chose the topic of universal free school meals. I focused on this new option under the National School Lunch Program called the Community Eligibility Provision. And basically, this is a newer provision that came out. Actually, this year is the first year that the provision has been available nationwide, and formerly it was out there as a pilot. And based on the pilot, I used that information and compared it to a case study on the Fitchburg public school system. Fitchburg basically this year elected to provide school lunch and breakfast free to all students, regardless of income. And the results from the pilot didn't quite match up to some of the previous research, and I was kind of interested in not only learning why the results weren't the same, but also kind of a more in-depth analysis of the different costs, particular funding related to the CEP. In my internship, I'll talk about this a little bit in more depth on my last slide. But basically, again, this is something that I was able to do as a AmeriCorps Vista at the Twin City Community Development Corp in Fitchburg, Mass. And the basis of my internship was on a vacant lot strategy report. So environmental policy was my selected concentration. I took 3 courses specific to the concentration, which were environmental consequences of globalization, environmental policy, and environmental law. And the last 2 classes were really the kind of, groundwork level classes to really understand the current environmental policy issues. What is environmental law? How does it work? How does it, pertain to policy making? And kind of as a, select subject, the environmental consequences of globalization was just very insightful in terms of understanding some environmental issues on the global scale. And for the elective course, I chose regional economic development. As I mentioned, economics is not really my strong suit, but I'm striving to better understand, economics. And I think the regional, kind of capacity is quite interesting. And I was able to apply it to North Central Massachusetts, where I currently live. And again, referring back to my hometown of Fitchburg. So I kind of like that regional context and understanding that economic, development is not made in a vacuum. There's regions, there's cities, there's towns, there can be entire states, and things go across boundaries. So during the 3 years I've been enrolled in the program, I've had the opportunity to have some professional development, and most of them relate to my experience as AmeriCorps Vista, and that was from July of 2013 to 14. And as AmeriCorps Vista and working at a NeighborWorks organization, I had access to different trainings as I have listed. And within those trainings, you got to attend courses, and these courses were, from 8 to 10 hours, spanning a couple of days. So I found them to be, quite substantial. Obviously, politics of policy fit right in with what I'm currently studying. Professionally, grant writing is just such a valuable tool to have. Currently, I'm enrolled in the Community Massachusetts Area Health Education Center, and it is a course that it's 80 hours, and it's community health worker training. So my current role right now is working as a community health worker. I'm contracted basically by the state of Massachusetts to facilitate the education and case management portion of the childhood-led poisoning prevention program for North Central Massachusetts. So this is really critical to my role as a CHW, and what I'm finding in this course is a lot of what I'm learning is not only applicable to that certain profession, but really any profession. So this is really valuable, and I started in April, and I should be done by the end of June. And with not only my experience as AmeriCorps, but my current job position, I've attended different trainings, webinars, and seminars that have, helped not only professionally, but a lot of them have tied in actually to my studies. Currently, I'm also working on an EPA project. It was a grant my organization received. So some of the web-based trainings I've gone through have been from the EPA. So I found that to be really a great complement to the work that I've been doing. So as my internship, as I mentioned, was during the spring of 2014 at the Twin Cities Community Development Corp in Fitchburg. It was basically tailored to my AmeriCorps experience, and it was really great to be able to apply the work that I was doing there, toward my internship. It would have been, very difficult for me to take off, time from work to just do an internship. So to be able to use my current work experience as the internship was extremely helpful to me. So basically, I worked on what I call the vacant lot project, and that was coming up with some policy recommendations and some potential strategies to basically not only convert vacant lots to productive use, but things to do to basically make sure that lots that are going to be created, through demolitions and particularly don't, get to a point where they become a public nuisance. So it's pretty much everything from the beginning to the end of the vacant lot life cycle per se that I evaluated during this internship. And luckily this is actually work I'm continuing to do in my current role. So it just was really great to have, that introduction during my internship, and I'm just very lucky and grateful to be able to continue the work on vacant lots in Fitchburg. And during my internship, I researched vacant lot strategies. I participated in vacant lot work group meetings and wrote a policy recommendation to the city of Fitchburg. And out of this actually came interest and now the passing of the Fitchburg side lot sales program. They're currently doing a case study on it. But I feel like a lot of the work that I, put into this is kind of being able to see it come into fruition is just a really great feeling. And I know that some of the work I put forward was influential in this. So I can't, take credit for all of it, but I do think the work I did through my internship has greatly influenced, the outcome of that policy. For my research project, as I mentioned, I evaluated the effects of the community eligibility provision under the National School Lunch Program. So I looked at costs that were not necessarily addressed in the former pilot, the impact on participation rates, funding specifically related to the information and the requirement under NSLP and the adoption of CEP that schools can no longer use the form that they would have formerly to collect socioeconomic data. So a lot of funding schools receive, for example, is kind of based on needs, and a lot of the needs are captured within that form. So that was something that I was really interested in looking at, and I basically used the Fitchburg Public School District as a case study for this. And within it, it revealed some kind of discrepancies, I think, compared to some of the pilot, and it also aligned with it as well. So I found it to be a really useful tool, not only, I think, academically, but again, talking about, the professionally and how they overlap in being able to think through a policy or an issue and come up with a research design. My research results were not exactly what I anticipated, but I think it was just really kind of an experiment, a thinking experiment in how to construct a research, project that is effective. So that is the end of my presentation. I'd like to say thank you, for sitting through and listening to what I had to say. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me either by phone or email. If anything wasn't clear or you have any questions about anything, again, I'm certainly available to address them. And again, thank you so much, and I hope you consider me for graduation this spring.